They told him he was nothing, no degree, no pedigree, no right to even sit in that chair. But Logan Hayes didn't need their approval. He'd spent 3 years in the dark, building something they couldn't see. And when the company's golden boy stole his work and watched it all burn, Logan didn't break. He smiled, because the most dangerous weapon in any war isn't rage, it's patience. And tonight, in a boardroom full of sharks, the Invisible Man was about to become unforgettable. If you want to see how a single father with everything to lose took down an empire built on lies, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in the Meridian Solutions lobby buzzed like dying insects. Logan Hayes sat in a chair that cost more than his monthly rent, trying not to look at the receptionist who kept glancing at him like he'd wandered in from the wrong building. His interview was scheduled for 2 o'clock. It was now 2:45. He'd worn his only suit, the one he'd bought at Goodwill 3 years ago for a funeral. The cuffs were starting to fray. His daughter Emma had noticed that morning while he was getting dressed. "Daddy, your sleeve is coming apart." "I know, sweetheart. Are they going to notice?" "Probably." She'd hugged him anyway, her small arms tight around his waist. "You're still the smartest person I know." 7 years old and already better at lying than he'd ever be. The receptionist's phone rang. She answered it with the kind of voice people reserve for people who matter. "Yes, Mr. Chen, I'll send him up now." She looked at Logan without quite making eye contact. 23rd floor, conference room C. Logan stood. His knees cracked. Too many hours on his feet at the warehouse, too many nights hunched over a laptop, teaching himself things he had no business knowing. He'd applied to Meridian Solutions on a whim. Well, not a whim exactly. Desperation dressed up as hope. The elevator smelled like expensive cologne and quiet judgment. Logan watched the numbers climb and tried to remember why he was doing this. The warehouse paid okay. The weekend shifts at the grocery store filled in the gaps. Emma had everything she needed. Mostly. Except time with her father. Except stability. Except a future that didn't involve him dying on his feet before she graduated high school. The doors opened onto a floor that looked like it had been designed by people who'd never worried about money in their lives. Glass walls. Minimalist furniture. A view of the city that made Logan's studio apartment feel even smaller than it was. Conference room C was at the end of the hall. Through the glass, he could see 3 people waiting. 2 men, 1 woman, all of them dressed like they belonged there. Logan pushed open the door. "Mr. Hayes." Older man didn't stand. He was maybe 60, silver hair, expensive watch. "I'm Richard Chen, VP of Engineering. This is Dr. Sarah Vance, our head of data architecture, and Marcus Webb, senior technical recruiter." Logan shook their hands. Webb's grip was limp. Vance's was absent. Chen's was a test Logan wasn't sure he passed. "Please sit." Logan sat. The chair was uncomfortable in a way that felt intentional. Chen opened a folder that Logan assumed was his resume. It was a thin file. Not much to work with. High school diploma. A few scattered community college courses he'd never finished. 3 years at an auto parts warehouse. 2 years stocking shelves. No references worth mentioning. "So," Chen said, not looking up, "tell us why you think you're qualified for a junior engineering position at one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the country." The room went quiet in the way that meant they already knew the answer. They decided before he walked in. This was a formality. Maybe some HR initiative to prove they interviewed diverse candidates. Logan had seen it before, but he'd promised Emma he'd try. "I'm not qualified," Logan said. "Not on paper." Vance looked up. Webb stopped scrolling on his phone. Chen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "Then why are we here?" Chen asked. "Because qualifications aren't the same as ability." Logan leaned forward slightly. "You're running a legacy data integration system that's about 6 months away from catastrophic failure. Your cloud migration strategy is dependent on third-party vendors who've already started hiking their rates. And your flagship predictive analytics platform has a memory leak in the primary threading module that's probably costing you about $40,000 a month in wasted computational overhead." The silence was different now. Vance set down her pen. "How do you know that?" "Your job postings. They're specific about the problems you need solved if you know how to read them. The memory leak is an educated guess based on the tools you list and the performance benchmarks you're asking for, But I'm right, aren't I? Vance didn't answer. She didn't need to. Chen closed the folder. Where did you study? I didn't. I taught myself. Nights and weekends. 3 years. Why? Because I have a daughter who deserves better than watching her father break his back for minimum wage. Webb shifted in his seat. Chen's face remained unreadable. Self-taught programmers are a dime a dozen, Mr. Hayes. Most of them couldn't code their way out of a paper bag. Then test me. Chen smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. Dr. Vance? Vance pulled out a laptop and turned it toward Logan. On the screen was a block of code, dense, ugly, the kind of thing that made even experienced engineers want to quit and become farmers. Debug it, she said. You have 10 minutes. Logan pulled the laptop closer. He didn't have 10 minutes. He had Emma's parent-teacher conference at 6 and a shift at the grocery store at 8. But he'd come this far. The code was a mess. Nested loops that didn't need to be nested. Variable names that made no sense. A sorting algorithm that would have made a CS 101 professor weep. But underneath the chaos, Logan could see the structure. The intent. What it was supposed to do versus what it actually did. He worked in silence. His fingers moved across the keyboard with a confidence that didn't match his outfit or his resume. Webb was watching now. So was Chen. At the 8-minute mark, Logan pushed the laptop back. Done. Vance took it, ran the code. Her eyebrows went up. It works. It does more than work, Logan said. It's 30% faster than whatever you had before. I optimized the loop structure and replaced your bubble sort with a quicksort hybrid. You're welcome. Webb laughed. Actually laughed. Chen didn't. Confidence is good, Chen said. Arrogance will get you fired. I'm not arrogant. I'm just tired of pretending I don't know things because I didn't learn them in the right building. Vance was still staring at the screen. Where did you learn to code like this? YouTube, Stack Overflow, trial and error. A lot of error. Logan checked his watch, 5:15. He needed to leave. Look, I know what this is. You needed to interview someone who didn't go to Stanford. I'm that guy. Check the box. I'll see myself out. He stood. Sit down, Mr. Hayes. Logan didn't sit. I appreciate your time, but I have somewhere to be. We're offering you the position. Logan sat. Chen leaned back in his chair. Junior systems engineer, $48,000 a year, standard benefits. You start Monday. It was more money than Logan had ever made in his life. It was also half what they'd pay someone with a degree. 60, Logan said. Webb's eyes went wide. Vance looked like she wanted to say something but didn't. Chen's expression didn't change. You're negotiating? You don't have any leverage. I have the ability to solve problems you can't solve yourself. That's the only leverage that matters. Chen studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled. A real one this time. 52. Final offer. Logan thought about Emma's school shoes that were too small, the car that needed new tires, the pediatrician bill he'd been dodging for 3 months. Deal. They shook hands. This time Chen's grip was different. Still testing, but maybe, just maybe, a little bit respectful. Monday morning came too fast. Logan dropped Emma off at school. She'd insisted on walking him to the car, making him promise to tell her everything about his first day. He'd promised. He'd probably lie. 7-year-olds didn't need to know about imposter syndrome. The Meridian Solutions building looked different in the daylight. Bigger, more intimidating. Logan checked in at security, got his badge, and took the elevator to the 15th floor. Engineering. His floor now. The thought didn't feel real. The department was an open floor plan, rows of desks, glass-walled offices along the perimeter, the low hum of keyboards and quiet conversations. Logan found his desk. It was in the back corner. No window. No privacy. A computer that looked like it had been cutting edge in 2015. Hayes? Logan turned. The man standing behind him was maybe 40, athletic build, expensive haircut, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. He wore a polo shirt with the Meridian logo and jeans that probably cost more than Logan's suit. I'm Victor Lang, lead architect. You'll be reporting to me. Logan shook his hand. Victor's grip was firm, practiced. The handshake of someone who'd learned that power was 90% performance. Welcome to the team. Chen tells me you've got some unconventional skills. I know my way around code. Good. Because we've got a lot of work and not a lot of time. Victor gestured toward the rest of the floor. Let me introduce you to the team. The team was 6 other engineers. 3 of them had PhDs. 2 had master's degrees from MIT. 1 had founded a startup that got acquired by Google. They all looked at Logan the way people look at someone who doesn't belong. Victor introduced him as our new junior engineer with a unique background. The subtext was clear. He's not one of us. Be nice anyway. The morning was orientation, HR paperwork, benefits enrollment, a tour of the building that took too long and taught him nothing useful. Lunch was in the cafeteria, subsidized, which was good because Logan's budget didn't have room for $12 salads. He ate alone. That was fine. He'd always eaten alone. At 1 o'clock, Victor called the team together in a conference room. The project, he explained, was called Atlas, a next-generation predictive analytics platform designed to help Fortune 500 companies optimize their supply chains. It was Meridian's biggest contract, $40 million. Make or break. We're behind schedule, Victor said, pulling up a Gantt chart that was more red than green. The client wants a beta deployment in 3 months. We're currently 6 months out, so we need to move fast. And we need to move smart. He looked at Logan. Hayes, you're on data integration. We need to pull information from 17 different legacy systems and normalize it for the Atlas pipeline. Think you can handle that? Yes. Good. Because if you can't, we're all screwed. The team laughed. Logan didn't. That afternoon, Logan dove into the codebase. It was worse than he'd expected. Spaghetti logic, undocumented functions, comments that contradicted the code they were commenting on. Whoever had built this had either been in a hurry or didn't care. Probably both. But underneath the mess, Logan could see the potential. The architecture was sound, the vision was clear, it just needed someone to care enough to fix it. He worked until 7, then 8. By 9, most of the office was empty. Logan was still at his desk, headphones on, coffee going cold, trying to untangle a database query that shouldn't have been this complicated. You're still here, Logan looked up. Victor was standing by his desk, jacket over his shoulder, car keys in hand. Just trying to get up to speed. You don't get overtime, you know, not at your level. I know. Victor studied him for a moment. You've got something to prove. Don't we all? Victor smiled. Fair enough. Just don't burn yourself out in the first week. We need you functional, not fried. He left. Logan went back to work. By the time he got home, it was almost 11. Emma was asleep. Mrs. Chen from next door, who watched Emma most nights for $20 and leftovers, was on the couch watching a Korean drama. Long day? She asked. First day. How was she? Perfect, as always. She did her homework, ate her dinner, asked about you maybe 15 times. Logan smiled. Thanks, Mrs. Chen. You look tired. I am tired. Good tired or bad tired? Logan thought about that, about the codebase that was a disaster, and the team that didn't trust him, and the desk in the corner with no window, about Emma asleep in the next room, safe and fed and unaware of how close they'd been to losing everything. Good tired, he said. The first 2 weeks were a blur. Logan worked 12-hour days, sometimes 14. He rewrote the data integration layer from scratch, optimized queries that had been running slow for months, fixed bugs that no one else had time to fix. He didn't make friends. The team was polite but distant. They'd invite each other to lunch and somehow never think to ask Logan. That was fine. He wasn't there to make friends, but he was learning, watching, paying attention to the way things worked. Victor was the star, the genius, the guy everyone deferred to. When he spoke in meetings, people listened. When he made decisions, no one questioned them. And he was good. Logan could see that. Victor understood systems architecture in a way that was almost intuitive. He could see 3 moves ahead, anticipate problems before they became disasters. But he was also sloppy. He'd make assumptions without checking the data, dismiss concerns without investigating them. And when things went wrong, which they did, regularly, he was very good at making sure the blame landed somewhere else. Logan noticed all of this, and he said nothing. 3 weeks in, Logan found something. A flaw in the Atlas core processing engine. It wasn't obvious. You had to dig deep into the threading model to see it, but it was there. a race condition that would cause the system to hang under heavy load. It was the kind of bug that wouldn't show up in testing, only in production, only when it mattered. Logan spent 2 days confirming it. Then he wrote up a detailed report, complete with proposed solutions, and sent it to Victor. Victor called him into his office an hour later. "You're sure about this? I've tested it a dozen different ways. It's real." Victor leaned back in his chair. "If you're right, this could delay deployment by weeks, maybe months. If I'm wrong, it'll crash in production and we'll lose the contract." Victor drummed his fingers on the desk. "Let me think about it." "There's nothing to think about. The bug is there. We need to fix it." "I said I'll think about it." Logan left the office. He didn't like the way that conversation had ended, but he'd done his job, identified the problem, proposed the solution. The rest was up to Victor. The next morning, there was a team meeting. Victor stood at the front of the room, looking confident in the way that meant he'd made a decision. "I've been reviewing the Atlas architecture," he said, "and I've identified a critical flaw in the threading model. There's a race condition that could cause system hangs under heavy load." Logan's stomach dropped. "It's going to require some significant refactoring, but I've already developed a solution. We'll need to push deployment back 3 weeks, but it's worth it to get this right." The team nodded, took notes, asked questions. No one looked at Logan. After the meeting, Logan approached Victor in the hallway. "That was my report." Victor didn't break stride. "Was it?" "You know it was. I sent it to you yesterday." "You sent me a lot of information. I synthesized it, made it actionable. That's what leadership does, Hayes." "You didn't synthesize anything. You copied it word for word." Victor stopped, turned. His expression was calm, almost amused. "Be very careful about what you're accusing me of. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm stating a fact. Here's a fact. You're a junior engineer with no degree and no industry experience. I'm a lead architect with 15 years in the field and a reputation that opens doors. Who do you think people are going to believe?" Logan said nothing. "That's what I thought." Victor started walking again. "Do good work, Hayes. Stay in your lane, and maybe you'll have a future here." Logan stood in the hallway for a long time after Victor left. He could feel something building inside him. Not anger. Anger was useless. Something colder, sharper. He went back to his desk, opened a new folder on his laptop, called it documentation, and he started keeping records. Every email, every meeting note, every conversation, timestamps, screenshots, version control histories, everything. Because Logan Hayes had learned a long time ago that the world didn't care about fairness. It cared about proof. And he was going to have proof. The pattern repeated itself. Logan would identify a problem, send it to Victor. And a few days later, Victor would present the solution in a team meeting as his own insight. The team started calling Victor a visionary. Chen mentioned in passing that Victor was being considered for VP. The CEO sent a company-wide email praising Victor's leadership on the Atlas project. And Logan kept his head down, worked his shifts, picked up Emma from school, documented everything. Emma noticed something was wrong. "You're quiet, Daddy." They were eating dinner, mac and cheese from a box, apple slices, the last of the milk. Logan had been staring at his plate for 5 minutes. "Just thinking about work. Is it hard?" "Sometimes." "Are people being mean to you?" Logan looked at his daughter, 7 years old, too smart for her own good. He wanted to lie, tell her everything was fine, but he'd promised himself he'd never lie to her about the important things. "Someone is taking credit for my work. That's not fair." "No, it's not." "Are you going to tell on them?" Logan smiled despite himself. "It's not that simple, sweetheart." "Why not?" "Because he's more important than me. People believe him." Emma thought about that. "But you're smarter." "That doesn't always matter." "It should." "Yes," Logan said. "It should." That night, after Emma was asleep, Logan sat at his kitchen table with his laptop open. The documentation folder was getting bigger. Emails, code commits, meeting transcripts. A timeline of every idea he'd had and every time Victor had stolen it. It wasn't enough yet. But it would be. Logan had spent his whole life being invisible, being dismissed, being told he didn't matter. He was done with that. He didn't know exactly how yet, But he was going to make Victor Lang see him, make them all see him. And when he did, it wouldn't be because he shouted or complained or demanded fairness. It would be because he had proof, because he'd been patient, because he'd played the long game while everyone else was playing checkers. The underdog wasn't weak. The underdog was waiting, and Logan Hayes was very, very good at waiting. 6 weeks into the job, Logan had learned to recognize the pattern. It started with silence. Victor would go quiet in meetings when Logan raised a concern, his expression carefully neutral. Then, 3 or 4 days later, that same concern would emerge from Victor's mouth as a breakthrough insight, complete with technical details that Logan had worked late nights to develop. The team never noticed, or maybe they did and didn't care. Victor was the golden boy. Logan was the guy who'd gotten lucky with a coding test. "Hayes, you got a minute?" Logan looked up from his monitor. It was Sarah Vance, the head of data architecture, who'd been in his interview. She stood at the edge of his cubicle with a coffee cup in one hand and a folder in the other. "Sure." She pulled up a chair, which felt significant. People didn't usually sit down for casual conversations in this office. "I've been watching your commits to the Atlas repository." Logan's stomach tightened. "Is there a problem?" "The opposite. Your code is clean, efficient, better than some of the senior engineers we've got." She paused. "How much of the threading refactor did you do?" "I identified the race condition, wrote up the analysis, proposed the solution architecture. And Victor implemented it?" Logan chose his words carefully. "Victor presented it to the team." Vance studied him for a long moment. She had the kind of eyes that didn't miss much. "You know what I think is interesting? I've worked with Victor for 3 years. He's brilliant at system design, big picture thinking, but the level of detail in that threading solution, that's not his style." Logan said nothing. "You're not going to say anything, are you?" "What would I say? That I think my boss is stealing my work? I'm a junior engineer with no credentials. He's got a master's from Carnegie Mellon and 15 years of experience. Who's going to believe me?" "Maybe someone already does." Vance stood. "Keep doing good work, Hayes. The right people are paying attention." She left before Logan could respond. He sat there for a minute, trying to figure out if that conversation had been encouraging or ominous. Probably both. That night, Emma had a school play. Some production about the water cycle that involved cardboard clouds and a lot of kids forgetting their lines. Emma played a raindrop. She had 3 lines and delivered all of them perfectly, her voice clear and confident in a way that made Logan's chest hurt. Afterward, in the parking lot, she was still wearing her costume, blue face paint and a construction paper raindrop taped to her shirt. "Did you see me, Daddy?" "I saw everything. I didn't forget my words." "You were perfect." She beamed. Then her expression shifted, suddenly serious. "Is your work getting better? Are people being nicer?" Logan helped her into the car, buying time to figure out how to answer. "It's complicated." "That means no." "It means I'm working on it." "You work on everything. That's why you're tired all the time." She wasn't wrong. Logan had been running on 5 hours of sleep for weeks. The warehouse had called him last week asking if he wanted to pick up weekend shifts. He'd said no. First time in 2 years he'd turned down extra money. The truth was he needed the time more than the cash now. Time to work, time to document, time to build his case. "I'm okay, Em. I promise." Mommy used to say that too, before she left. The words hit harder than they should have. Emma rarely talked about her mother. Rachel had walked out when Emma was 3, said she wasn't cut out for motherhood, and Logan hadn't heard from her since. No calls, no birthday cards, nothing. "I'm not going anywhere," Logan said quietly. "You promise?" "I promise." She believed him. Kids that age still could. The next morning, Victor called an emergency team meeting. Everyone filed into the conference room looking confused and slightly worried. Emergency meetings were never good news. Victor stood at the head of the table, his laptop connected to the projector. He looked tired, actually tired, not just performing tiredness for sympathy. There were dark circles under his eyes. "We've got a problem, a big one." He pulled up a series of charts, error rates, system crashes, performance metrics trending in the wrong direction. The Atlas beta deployment was supposed to go live with the client in 2 weeks. According to these numbers, it wasn't ready. We're seeing cascade failures in the distributed processing layer. When one node goes down, it's taking out adjacent nodes instead of rerouting. The whole system becomes unstable under anything above 60% load. One of the senior engineers, a guy named Marcus who'd been at Meridian for 6 years, leaned forward. That shouldn't be possible. We stress tested this last month. We tested it with synthetic data. The client just gave us access to their production data set. Real-world conditions are exposing weaknesses we didn't see in the lab. How bad is it? That was Dr. Patel, one of the MIT graduates, who actually seemed decent when he wasn't ignoring Logan's existence. Bad enough that if we deploy as scheduled, it'll crash within 48 hours and take their entire supply chain offline. We're talking millions in losses, lawsuits, the end of Meridian's reputation. The room went silent. Logan was running the numbers in his head. Distributed processing, cascade failures. He'd seen this before, not in a corporate environment, but in an open source project he'd contributed to 2 years ago. Different scale, same problem. We need solutions. Fast. Victor looked around the table. I want everyone on this. Cancel your plans for the next 2 weeks. We're in crisis mode. The meeting broke up into smaller conversations. People clustered around laptops, pulling up code, throwing out theories. Logan went back to his desk and started digging into the processing layer architecture. 3 hours later, he had it. The problem wasn't in the code itself, it was in the configuration. The load balancing algorithm was using a round-robin distribution strategy, which worked fine in testing but fell apart with real-world data because the client's datasets were unevenly sized. Some nodes were getting overwhelmed while others sat idle, and when an overwhelmed node crashed, the system tried to redistribute its load in a way that just overwhelmed other nodes. The fix was actually elegant. Switch to a dynamic load balancing strategy that monitored node capacity in real time and distributed work based on actual availability, not just round-robin rotation. Logan spent another 2 hours writing up the solution, complete with code samples and performance projections. He sent it to Victor at 7 in the evening. Victor replied at 7:15. Good thinking. Let me review and we'll discuss tomorrow. Logan went home feeling something close to optimistic. Maybe this would be different. Maybe when the stakes were this high, Victor would actually give credit where it was due. He should have known better. The next morning, Victor called another team meeting. He looked better, more energized. He had that gleam in his eye that Logan had learned meant Victor thought he'd figured something out. I've been up all night working on this, Victor said, which was probably technically true. And I think I've cracked it. He walked them through the solution. Dynamic load balancing, real-time capacity monitoring, the exact architecture Logan had sent him 12 hours ago. This should solve the cascade failure problem and give us the stability we need for deployment. I'll need everyone's help implementing it, but I think we can hit our deadline. The team erupted in relieved conversation. Chen, who'd sat in on the meeting, actually clapped Victor on the shoulder. This is why we pay you the big bucks, Lang. Logan sat very still. He could feel something cold settling in his chest, not anger. Anger was hot and loud and useless. This was different, calculating, patient. After the meeting, Logan went to the bathroom, locked himself in a stall, pulled out his phone and transferred the email chain to his documentation folder. Time-stamped, archived, proof. When he came back out, Marcus was waiting by the sinks. You okay, man? You look like you're about to throw up. I'm fine. This whole crisis has everyone stressed, but Victor came through. Guy's a machine. Logan washed his hands, looked at his reflection in the mirror. Yeah, he's something. The next 2 weeks were brutal. The team worked 16-hour days implementing Victor's solution, or Logan's solution, depending on who you asked. Not that anyone was asking Logan. He wrote code until his eyes burned, debugged until the words on his screen started to blur together, tested edge cases and stress scenarios until he could recite error messages in his sleep. Emma barely saw him. Mrs. Chen had agreed to extended hours, but Logan could see the concern in her eyes when he picked Emma up at 10 at night, his daughter already in pajamas and half asleep. This is temporary, he told Mrs. Chen. You said that last week. I know. I'm sorry. Just until the deployment. It's not me you should apologize to. She was right. Emma deserved better. But Emma also deserved a father who could pay the bills, who could give her a future, who could prove that you didn't need a fancy degree to matter in this world. So Logan kept working. The deployment happened on a Thursday. The entire team gathered in the operations center to watch the system go live. The client's CTO was on a video call, along with Richard Chen and half of Meridian's executive team. Victor stood at the front of the room, calm and confident. Initializing now. The dashboards flickered to life. Data started flowing. Processing nodes lit up green across the distributed network. Load balancing metrics showed clean, even distribution. 60% capacity, 70, 80, no crashes, no cascade failures. The system held. The client's CTO was smiling. "Gentlemen, I think we have a winner." The room erupted in applause. Chen shook Victor's hand. The CEO, who'd flown in from New York just for this, pulled Victor aside for a conversation that looked very much like a job offer being dangled. Logan stood in the back of the room, watching, documenting, waiting. That night, there was a celebration at some upscale bar downtown. The engineering team, plus executives, plus anyone else who wanted to bask in the Atlas success story. Logan went because not going would have been noticed. He nursed one beer for 3 hours and tried to be invisible. Victor was holding court at the bar, telling the story of how he'd solved the crisis. "I knew we were missing something fundamental, so I went back to first principles, stripped away all the assumptions, and rebuilt the load balancing logic from the ground up." People were hanging on his every word. Victor was good at this. The performance, the charisma, making people believe. "That's our golden boy right there." Chen appeared next to Logan, 2 glasses of scotch in his hands. He offered one to Logan, who took it more out of surprise than desire. "Lang's going places. VP by the end of the year if I have anything to say about it." Logan sipped the scotch. It tasted like smoke and broken promises. "He did good work." "Damn right he did. You contributed too, Hayes. Don't think we don't see the hours you're putting in." "I just write code." "You do more than that. Vance speaks highly of you, says you've got instincts that can't be taught." Chen paused. "Stick with Victor. Learn from him. You could have a real future here." Logan nodded, smiled, said the things he was supposed to say, and all the while he was thinking about the documentation folder on his laptop, about the trail of evidence that proved who'd really solved the crisis. He left the bar at 10, picked up Emma from Mrs. Chen's apartment, carried his sleeping daughter up the stairs to their apartment, laid her in bed, and pulled the covers up to her chin. She stirred. "Daddy?" "I'm here, sweetheart." "Did you have a good day?" Logan thought about that. About Victor getting praised for work he didn't do. About Chen promising Logan a future built on learning from a fraud. About the celebration for a victory that wasn't really Victor's. "It was interesting," he said finally. Emma smiled in her sleep. Logan kissed her forehead and went to his own room. He didn't sleep much. He pulled up his laptop and opened the documentation folder. It was getting substantial now. Months of evidence. A clear pattern of theft. Emails proving he'd submitted solutions that Victor later presented as his own. But evidence wasn't enough. Logan had learned that the hard way. You needed timing. You needed leverage. You needed the right moment when the truth would matter more than politics. That moment hadn't arrived yet. But it was coming. Logan could feel it. The weeks after the Atlas deployment were strange. Victor was on top of the world. There were rumors of a promotion, a corner office, maybe even a vice president position being created just for him. And Logan kept working, kept watching, kept documenting. He started noticing other things too. Small stuff at first. Victor would show up late to meetings looking hungover. His code reviews became sloppier. He'd approve merge requests without actually reading them, rubber stamping work that should have been kicked back for revision. The success had made Victor lazy, or maybe it had just revealed what was already there. When you could take credit for other people's work, why bother doing your own? 3 months after Atlas went live, the client came back with a request for expansion. They wanted to scale the system to handle triple the data volume. More processing nodes, more complex analytics. A complete overhaul of the back-end architecture. It was a $20 million contract, the kind of money that would set Meridian up for years. Chen assigned Victor to lead the project. "This is your baby, Lang. You built Atlas. Now make it bigger." The kickoff meeting was on a Monday. Victor stood at the whiteboard, markers in hand, ready to architect the future. "So here's what I'm thinking. We take the existing distributed processing framework and basically clone it. More nodes, same logic. Scale horizontally." Logan was sitting in the back, laptop open, half listening. But that sentence made him look up. "That won't work," he said. The room went quiet. Victor turned, marker still poised against the whiteboard. "I'm sorry?" "Horizontal scaling. It won't work for triple volume. The load balancing algorithm we're using is optimized for the current data size. Triple the volume means exponentially more complex routing decisions. You'll hit diminishing returns around 150% capacity, and beyond that, you'll actually see performance degradation." Victor's expression hardened. "And you know this how?" "Because I wrote the load balancing algorithm. I know its limitations." Someone coughed. Marcus was looking at his laptop very intently. Dr. Patel was suddenly fascinated by his coffee cup. Victor set down the marker. "Hayes, I appreciate your input, but I think I understand my own architecture well enough to know how to scale it." "It's not your architecture." The words were out before Logan could stop them. The room temperature dropped about 20 degrees. Victor's voice was very calm, very dangerous. "Excuse me?" Logan could feel everyone staring at him. This was it. The moment he'd been avoiding. The line he'd sworn he wouldn't cross until he had all his evidence lined up perfectly. But he was tired. Tired of watching Victor collect praise for work he didn't do. Tired of being invisible. Tired of playing it safe while a fraud built an empire on stolen ideas. The load balancing architecture, the threading refactor, the cascade failure solution. I designed all of it. I sent you the proposals. You presented them as your own work. Victor laughed. Actually laughed. "That's a serious accusation, Hayes. I hope you can back it up." "I can." "Then by all means, show us." Logan pulled up his documentation folder. Months of emails, code commits, time-stamped evidence showing that every major breakthrough on the Atlas project had originated with Logan, had been sent to Victor, and had later been presented by Victor to the team. He screen-shared to the conference room display, started walking through the evidence. The room was silent, except for his voice. When he finished, Victor was still smiling, but it was a different kind of smile now. "That's an impressive collection of correspondence, Hayes. It proves we worked together, that I solicited your input, mentored you, guided your development as an engineer." He looked around the room. "That's what good leaders do. They cultivate talent. They create environments where junior engineers can contribute. You didn't cultivate anything. You stole. I synthesized. I took raw ideas and made them actionable. That's what leadership is." Victor's voice was patient, condescending. "You're young. You don't understand how this works yet. Individual contributions matter less than team results, and the team results speak for themselves." Logan stood up. "The team results are built on my work." "Prove it." And there it was. The trap. Because Logan could prove the ideas were his, but he couldn't prove that Victor hadn't improved them. Couldn't prove that the synthesis and implementation weren't just as valuable as the initial insight. In a room full of engineers who'd never questioned Victor's brilliance, Logan's evidence looked less like proof of theft and more like sour grapes from a junior engineer who didn't understand the hierarchy. "This meeting is over." Victor's voice had an edge now. "Hayes, I'd like to see you in my office." Logan gathered his laptop. No one would look at him. Marcus studied his phone. Dr. Patel suddenly needed to take a call. Even the engineers who'd seemed sympathetic before were finding reasons to be elsewhere. He followed Victor down the hall. Victor's office was glass-walled, which meant the whole floor could watch this conversation. Victor closed the door, but didn't sit down. What the hell was that? The truth. The truth is you're a junior engineer who's gotten too big for his britches. You've contributed good work. I've acknowledged that. I've even given you opportunities to shine. But you don't get to walk into a meeting and undermine me in front of the team. You undermined yourself by stealing my work. Victor's expression shifted. The friendly mentor mask dropped. What was underneath was colder. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to the team. You're going to admit you overstepped. And you're going to keep your head down and do your job. And if I don't, then you'll be fired for insubordination. And good luck finding another engineering job without a degree and with a termination on your record. Victor leaned against his desk. You're not as smart as you think you are, Hayes. This isn't about who had the ideas. It's about who the company trusts. And they trust me. Logan left without responding. Walked back to his desk. Logged into his computer. His hands were shaking. That night, Emma found him sitting at the kitchen table, staring at his laptop. "Daddy, you're sad." I'm okay. You're lying. She climbed into his lap, 7 years old and too perceptive for her own good. What happened? Logan closed the laptop. I tried to stand up for myself at work. It didn't go well. Did you get in trouble? Maybe. But you were right? Yes. Then why are you in trouble? Because being right isn't always enough. Emma thought about that. That's stupid. Logan laughed despite himself. Yeah, it is. She hugged him, her small arms around his neck, her face pressed against his shoulder. I'm proud of you anyway. And that was enough. For tonight, that was enough. Logan knew what he had to do now. The direct approach hadn't worked. Confronting Victor publicly had only made Logan look bad. So he'd go back to what he knew. Patience, documentation, waiting for the right moment. Because Victor was wrong about one thing, Logan was exactly as smart as he thought he was. And he was done being invisible. The apology Victor demanded never came. Logan showed up to work the next day, sat at his desk, and wrote code like nothing had happened. Victor didn't push it. Maybe he figured the humiliation had been punishment enough. Maybe he was just waiting for Logan to quit on his own. Logan wasn't quitting. He went back to being invisible, answered when spoken to, contributed in meetings only when directly asked, kept his head down and his observations to himself. To anyone watching, he looked like a man who'd learned his lesson. But at night, after Emma was asleep, Logan was building something else entirely. A complete technical audit of the Atlas expansion project. Every design decision Victor was making, every architectural choice, every risk assessment, and he was finding problems. Victor's horizontal scaling approach wasn't just inefficient, it was dangerous. The cost projections were wildly optimistic. The timeline ignored critical dependencies. The load testing protocols wouldn't catch the edge cases that would emerge in production. Logan documented all of it. Not to send to Victor this time, not to try and fix it, just to have the record. To be able to say, when everything fell apart, that he'd seen it coming. 2 weeks after the confrontation, Sarah Vance stopped by Logan's desk again. This time she didn't sit down. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. Logan saved his work and followed her out of the engineering bay, down the hallway, into one of the small conference rooms that were supposed to be soundproof, but probably weren't. Vance closed the door. You made a mistake. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you torpedoed your career over pride. Logan leaned against the wall. It wasn't pride. It was truth. Truth without strategy is just noise, Hayes. You had evidence. You had a pattern. You could have built a case and brought it to HR or to Chen quietly. Instead, you confronted Victor in front of the whole team. Would HR have listened? Vance didn't answer immediately. Probably not. Victor's got too much political capital, but at least you wouldn't have looked like the unstable junior engineer with an axe to grind. So what was I supposed to do? Just let him keep stealing? You were supposed to be smarter than your anger. Vance sat on the edge of the conference table. I've been in this industry 20 years. I've seen a lot of brilliant people fail because they didn't understand that being right isn't enough. You need timing. You need allies. You need leverage. I had evidence. Evidence of collaboration. That's how Victor spun it, and that's how everyone's going to remember it. She paused. The only way you're going to prove theft is if Victor fails, publicly, undeniably, and in a way that makes it clear his failure came from relying on stolen ideas he didn't understand well enough to execute. Logan looked at her. You want me to sabotage the project. I want you to let Victor sabotage himself. There's a difference. Vance stood. The expansion project is a disaster waiting to happen. Anyone with eyes can see that. Victor's overconfident, underprepared, and too arrogant to ask for help. When it crashes, and it will crash, you need to be the person who can fix it, not the person who got fired for insubordination 3 months earlier. So I just wait. You wait. You document. And when the moment comes, you make sure everyone knows you saw this coming and tried to prevent it. She left. Logan sat in the conference room for another 10 minutes, thinking about what she'd said. Let Victor sabotage himself. It made sense. It was probably the smart play. It also felt like giving up. But Logan had Emma to think about. Bills to pay. A future that depended on him not getting fired out of spite. So he'd wait. Again. like he'd been waiting his whole life for someone to see him as something more than a mistake in a thrift store suit. The Atlas expansion project officially kicked off the following Monday. Victor held a launch meeting that felt more like a coronation. He'd brought in catering, expensive sandwiches, and craft sodas. Chen was there, along with two other VPs and the CEO herself, Catherine Reeves, a woman in her 50s who'd built Meridian from nothing and had a reputation for not tolerating incompetence. "This is our moonshot," Reeves said, standing at the head of the conference table. "Atlas put us on the map. Atlas 2 is going to make us legendary. Victor, this is your project, your team, your vision. Don't let us down." Victor stood and gave a speech about innovation and excellence and pushing boundaries. He was good at speeches. Logan had to give him that. By the time Victor finished, you could almost believe he actually understood what he was promising to build. Almost. The team assignments went up that afternoon. Logan found himself on infrastructure optimization, which was a polite way of saying he'd be doing the unglamorous back-end work that nobody wanted. Marcus got assigned to the UI team. Dr. Patel got analytics. The prestigious assignments went to Victor's favorites. Logan didn't complain. Infrastructure was exactly where he wanted to be. That's where the real problems would show up first. Where he'd have front-row seats to the collapse he was increasingly certain was coming. He worked his assigned tasks during the day. At night, he worked on his audit. The more he dug into Victor's expansion architecture, the worse it looked. The database sharding strategy would create bottlenecks. The caching layer was overcomplicated. The deployment pipeline had single points of failure that would be catastrophic in production. Logan wrote it all down, time-stamped, cross-referenced, built a parallel architecture document showing how it should have been done. Not to submit, just to have. For later. Emma's 8th birthday fell on a Tuesday. Logan took the afternoon off, which felt transgressive. People at Meridian didn't take time off during active projects. But Emma only turned 8 once, and Logan had already missed too many moments trying to prove himself to people who didn't want to see him. They went to the zoo. Emma's choice. She'd been learning about ecosystems in school and wanted to see the rainforest exhibit. They spent 2 hours watching monkeys and reading placards about biodiversity, while Emma peppered him with questions he only sometimes knew how to answer. "Daddy, why do some animals go extinct?" "Usually because their environment changes faster than they can adapt." "That's sad." "Yeah, it is." "Are you adapting?" Logan looked at his daughter, 8 years old, and asking questions that cut straight to the bone. "I'm trying." "Good, because I don't want you to go extinct." He bought her a stuffed red panda in the gift shop and a cupcake from the zoo cafe that cost $9 and was mostly frosting. She was happy. That was worth more than anything happening at Meridian. They got home around 6. Mrs. Chen had made dinner, which she absolutely didn't need to do but did anyway because she was that kind of person. They ate Korean fried chicken and rice while Emma talked about the monkeys and the sloths. And did Mrs. Chen know that poison dart frogs weren't actually poisonous in captivity because they got their poison from their diet in the wild? Logan's phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "Emergency meeting tomorrow 8 a.m. Victor's freaking out about something." Logan put the phone away. Whatever it was could wait until morning. Tonight was about Emma. The emergency meeting turned out to be about performance benchmarks. The client had requested preliminary testing results, and the numbers weren't good. The system was running at about 70% of projected capacity, which meant it would barely handle the current load, let alone the tripled volume they were promising. Victor stood at the whiteboard looking like he'd slept in his clothes. "We need to optimize everything. Strip out unnecessary processes, streamline the data pipeline, reduce overhead." "We could implement better caching," Dr. Patel suggested. "Already maxed out." "Compression algorithms?" "Would slow down processing too much." One by one, the team threw out suggestions. One by one, Victor shot them down. Logan sat in the back, watching, waiting. "Hayes." Logan looked up. Victor was staring at him with an expression that might have been desperation or might have been resentment. "You've been quiet. Any brilliant ideas?" The room was watching. This was a test. Victor wanted Logan to either offer something he could steal or stay silent and prove he had nothing to contribute. Either way, Victor won. Logan considered his options. Then he said, "The problem isn't optimization, it's architecture. You can't make a fundamentally flawed design run faster. You need to rebuild the processing layer from scratch. We don't have time for that. Then you don't have time to hit your performance targets. Victor's jaw tightened. That's not helpful. You asked for my opinion. I asked for solutions. That is the solution. The architecture is wrong. No amount of optimization is going to fix it. The room went very quiet. Marcus was staring at his laptop. Dr. Patel looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Victor smiled. It wasn't friendly. Well, thank you for that incredibly valuable input, Hayes. As always, your insights are noted. The meeting ended 10 minutes later. Logan went back to his desk. His phone buzzed again. A text from Vance. My office, now. He found her in her glass-walled office on the 20th floor, surrounded by monitors displaying code and architectural diagrams. She didn't look happy. What are you doing? My job. Your job is to not get fired before Victor crashes and burns. You're antagonizing him. He asked for my opinion. He asked for you to shut up or give him something he could use. You did neither. Logan sat down without being invited. The project is going to fail, Dr. Vance. The architecture is wrong. The timeline is wrong. The performance targets are unrealistic. And when it crashes, it's not just going to take down Victor. It's going to take down everyone on the team, including me. So you're trying to fix it. I'm trying to make sure there's a record that I warned them, that I knew what was coming. Vance studied him for a long moment. You're playing a dangerous game. I don't have the luxury of playing it safe. No, I suppose you don't. She turned to one of her monitors, pulled up a file. I'm going to tell you something that doesn't leave this room. The board is watching this project very closely. Atlas was successful, but it was also over budget and behind schedule. They've given Victor enough rope to either pull off something spectacular or hang himself with it. Which do you think is going to happen? Honestly, I think he's going to hang himself. The question is, who else gets dragged down with him? She looked at Logan. Richard Chen likes you. So do I. We see what you're capable of, but we can't protect you if you keep painting a target on your back. What am I supposed to do? Exactly what you're doing. Document everything. Build your evidence. But stop confronting Victor. Let him fail on his own terms. Logan left feeling less reassured than he probably should have. Vance was right about the strategy. But strategy required patience, and Logan was running out of that particular resource. The next 3 weeks were a grinding march toward inevitable disaster. The performance numbers got worse. The client started asking pointed questions. Victor got more erratic, snapping at people in meetings, sending emails at 3 a.m. demanding updates. And Logan kept finding problems. The database sharding strategy was creating data inconsistencies. The load balancer was routing requests inefficiently. The monitoring system wasn't granular enough to catch problems before they became catastrophic. He documented all of it, sent none of it to Victor, just added it to his audit file and waited. Emma noticed he was distracted. You're thinking about work again. They were at the park. Saturday afternoon. Emma was on the swings and Logan was pushing her, but his mind was 3 miles away at a glass tower full of people about to make a very expensive mistake. Sorry, sweetheart. It's okay. I know it's important. You're important. I know that too. But work is important because it helps you take care of me, right? Logan stopped the swing, turned Emma around to face him. You're the most important thing in my life. Nothing else is even close. I know, Daddy. She hugged him. But it's okay to care about work too. I want you to do good things there. Important things. What if the people at work don't see the important things I'm trying to do? Emma thought about that. Then they're not looking hard enough. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, Logan got an email from Marcus. No subject line, just a link to a shared document. Logan opened it. It was a technical analysis of the Atlas expansion architecture, detailed, thorough, and brutally honest about its flaws. At the bottom was a note. I've been working on this for 2 weeks. Thought you should see it. Don't tell anyone I sent it. M. Logan read through the document twice. Marcus had found most of the same problems Logan had. Different perspective, same conclusions. The architecture was fundamentally broken. He closed his laptop and sat in the dark kitchen, thinking. Marcus had risked his job sending that document, which meant Marcus saw what was coming too, which meant Logan wasn't alone in this. The thought was more comforting than it should have been. The client presentation was scheduled for a Thursday. 10 weeks into the project, Victor would demonstrate the current state of Atlas II, show performance metrics, and convince them that Meridian was on track to deliver the expansion on time and on budget. The entire executive team would be watching, including Catherine Reeves. The day before the presentation, Victor looked like he'd aged 5 years. He'd lost weight. His expensive clothes hung wrong. The charm that usually came so easily was nowhere to be found. He called a last-minute team meeting. Tomorrow's presentation is critical. I need everyone at their absolute best. Patel, you're handling the analytics demo. Marcus, you've got the UI walkthrough. Hayes. Victor paused, looking at Logan like he was trying to decide something. You're on standby, in case we need technical backup, which was code for sit in the back and don't embarrass me. Logan nodded. Understood. That night he couldn't sleep. He kept running scenarios in his head. What would happen when the client asked tough questions? When they dug into the performance numbers? When they realized the system wasn't ready? Would Victor admit the problems? Blame the team? Try to spin disaster into delay? At 2 a.m, Logan gave up on sleep. He went to his laptop and opened the audit file. Months of documentation. Every warning ignored, every problem dismissed, every solution stolen and implemented poorly. It was comprehensive, damning, undeniable, and it was time to decide what to do with it. The presentation was at 10. Logan got to the office at 8 and found the conference room already being set up. Catering, expensive coffee, the kind of production that suggested Meridian was trying very hard to impress. Victor arrived at 9:30. He'd pulled himself together, fresh suit, neat hair. The charm was back, at least on the surface. He ran through the presentation twice, checking every slide, every transition, every talking point. The client arrived at 9:55. 4 people. The CTO, the head of operations, a data architect, and someone from finance. They looked like people who did not like having their time wasted. Catherine Reeves made introductions. Richard Chen gave opening remarks. And then Victor took the floor. He started strong. The vision for Atlas II. The market opportunity. The technical innovations that would set Meridian apart from every competitor. He was selling a dream, and for the first 10 minutes, the client looked interested. Then came the demo. Dr. Patel brought up the analytics dashboard. Live data, real-time processing, everything working exactly as designed, except the numbers were wrong. Logan saw it immediately. The throughput metrics were showing higher capacity than the actual system could handle. Someone had fudged the test data, made it look better than it was. The client's data architect saw it too. Those processing speeds seem high. What's your actual node capacity? Victor didn't hesitate. We're running distributed processing across 20 nodes, each handling approximately 5,000 transactions per second. So 100,000 transactions per second total capacity? Correct. The data architect pulled out a tablet, started doing math. Your current dataset is running at about 60,000 transactions per second, but our production environment peaks at 200,000. You're telling me you can scale to 4 times current capacity? That's the plan. Show me. And there it was. The question Victor couldn't answer, because the system couldn't scale to 4 times capacity. It could barely handle current load. Victor smiled, confident, unconcerned. We're still in optimization phase. The architecture is designed to scale. We just need to fine-tune the implementation. So you can't show me? Not today, but I can walk you through the architectural design that makes it possible. He pulled up a slide. The distributed processing architecture, the same design Logan had warned would fail. The client's data architect studied it for maybe 30 seconds. This won't work. The room went silent. I'm sorry? Victor's smile was frozen. This architecture, it's not built for the scale you're promising. Your load balancing strategy assumes even data distribution, but our data sets are highly variable. You'll hit bottlenecks around 150,000 transactions per second, and beyond that, performance will degrade exponentially. It was exactly what Logan had told Victor 3 months ago, word for word. The same warning Logan had documented and Victor had ignored. Victor's face was doing something complicated, trying to maintain confidence while clearly scrambling for a response. I appreciate your concern, but I've stress-tested this architecture extensively. With synthetic data, I assume. not real-world conditions. We used the best available data at the time, which wasn't our data, because you just got access to our production environment 2 weeks ago. Victor opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Catherine Reeves leaned forward. Victor, is this going to be a problem? No, absolutely not. We just need to make some adjustments. How long? 2 weeks? Maybe 3. The client's CTO shook his head. We don't have 2 weeks. We need this system deployed in 6 weeks, or we're going with your competitor. We can make that timeline. No, you can't. The data architect was still looking at the architecture diagram. This needs a complete redesign. You're talking months, not weeks. The room erupted in tense conversation. The client was unhappy. Chen looked furious. Reeves had the expression of someone mentally calculating how much this disaster was going to cost. And Victor was drowning. Logan sat in the back, watching it all unfold. This was the moment Vance had talked about. The collapse. The public failure that would prove Victor had been coasting on stolen ideas he didn't understand. Victor's eyes found Logan across the room, desperate, looking for a lifeline. Logan could have given it to him, could have stayed silent, could have let Victor twist in the wind he'd created. But he thought about Emma asking if he was adapting, about Mrs. Chen watching him come home exhausted night after night, about 3 years of teaching himself things he had no business knowing so his daughter could have a better life than he'd had. He stood up. I can fix it. Every head in the room turned toward him. Excuse me? Reeves said. Logan walked to the front of the room. His heart was hammering, his hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. The architecture is flawed, but I know how to fix it. I've known for 3 months. Victor's face went white. Logan pulled out his laptop, connected it to the projector, brought up his audit file. This is every problem with the current design, and this, he pulled up his parallel architecture document, is how to fix it. Dynamic load balancing based on real-time capacity monitoring, adaptive sharding that adjusts to data distribution patterns, redundant processing nodes that can handle variable loads without cascade failures. The client's data architect was leaning forward, studying the screen. This could work. It will work. I've modeled it against your production dataset. It'll handle 200,000 transactions per second with room to scale to 300,000 if you need it. Reeves was looking at Logan like she was seeing him for the first time. And you've had this ready for 3 months? Yes, ma'am. Why wasn't it implemented? Logan looked at Victor, then back at Reeves. Because I'm a junior engineer who was told to stay in my lane. The silence was deafening. Victor found his voice first. Hayes is overstating his contributions. This is a team effort. Is it? The client's data architect was still studying Logan's architecture on the screen. Because this looks like the work of someone who actually understands distributed systems at scale. Your presentation looked like someone trying to fake it. Reeves held up a hand. Mr. Hayes, can you walk us through this solution in detail? Logan could feel the weight of every eye in the room. This was the moment. The line between invisible and seen, between dismissed and heard. His mouth was dry, but he nodded. The core problem is that traditional load balancing treats all data the same. But your production environment has massive variance. Some transactions are lightweight, some are computationally expensive. The current architecture routes based on simple rotation, which means you'll always have nodes that are overloaded while others sit idle. He pulled up a diagram. My approach uses predictive routing. The system analyzes incoming transactions in real time, estimates their computational cost, and routes them to nodes with available capacity. It's dynamic, adaptive, and it scales linearly instead of hitting a wall at 150. The data architect nodded slowly. What about failover? If a node crashes under load? Redundant processing pools with health monitoring. If a node shows signs of stress, the system preemptively redistributes its queue before it crashes. No cascade failures, no data loss. Latency overhead for all that monitoring? Negligible. I'm using lightweight heartbeat protocols and caching prediction models. The monitoring overhead is less than 2% of total processing capacity. The questions kept coming, technical, detailed, the kind of questions that would have exposed a fraud in seconds. Logan answered every one. Not perfectly. He stumbled over terminology once or twice, had to think through a caching question before responding, but he knew the system inside and out because he'd built it piece by piece, in stolen hours between shifts and bedtime stories. After 15 minutes, the client's CTO held up a hand. Okay, I'm convinced this could work. The question is, can you actually implement it in 6 weeks? Logan looked at Reeves, then at Chen. Both of them were watching him with expressions he couldn't quite read. Not alone, Logan said. I'd need the full team, and I'd need authority to make architectural decisions without having to fight for every change. That seems reasonable, the CTO said. Ms. Reeves, if you can deliver this system as described, we're still interested in moving forward, but we need a leadership structure we can trust. No offense to Mr. Lang, but this presentation didn't inspire confidence. Victor was staring at the table. His face had gone from white to red to something close to gray. Reeves stood. Give us 30 minutes. We need to discuss this internally. The client stepped out. The moment the door closed, Chen turned on Victor. What the hell was that? Richard, I can explain. You had 3 months. 3 months and a $20 million contract, and you showed up with a design that their data architect dismantled in 30 seconds? The architecture is sound. We just need to optimize. It's broken, Victor. Everyone in this room knows it's broken, including you, apparently, since Hayes warned you about this exact problem months ago. Victor's eyes flashed. Hayes is a junior engineer who doesn't understand the complexities of client management. He understands distributed systems better than you do. Vance's voice cut through the room. She'd been silent until now. I've been watching his code commits for months. Everything he just presented? He's been building it on his own time, while you were taking credit for his work on Atlas. That's not... I didn't... Victor looked around the room, searching for allies. He found none. Even the engineers who'd ignored Logan's warnings were suddenly very interested in their laptops. Reeves stepped closer to Victor. She was a small woman, but she had presence. Did you steal Hayes's work? No, I synthesized his contributions into actionable implementations. That's what leaders do. Show me. I'm sorry? Show me your synthesis, your implementations, the work you personally did to make Hayes's ideas actionable. Victor opened his laptop, started pulling up files. His hands were shaking slightly. Reeves watched for about 2 minutes. Then she closed the laptop. You're suspended, effective immediately, pending a full review of your contributions to both Atlas and Atlas II. Catherine, please. 30 days. Unpaid. And if we find evidence that you've been systematically taking credit for other people's work, you're done. Not just suspended, terminated. Victor looked like he'd been punched. You can't do this. I built Atlas. I brought in the biggest contract in company history. No. Reeves turned to Logan. He did. You just presented it. Victor grabbed his laptop and walked out. He didn't slam the door, didn't make a scene, just left. Quietly. Like a man who knew he had already lost. The room exhaled collectively. Chen looked at Logan. Can you really deliver this in 6 weeks? I think so, if I have the resources. You'll have whatever you need. Reeves was still studying him. But I want to be very clear about something, Mr. Hayes. This isn't a promotion. This is a test. You're claiming you can do what Victor couldn't. Prove it. Deliver this project on time, on budget, and to specification. Do that, and we'll talk about your future here. And if I can't, then you'll have failed publicly, and your career here will be over, just like Victor's. She paused. But I don't think you would have stepped up if you weren't confident you could deliver. Logan thought about that. About Emma, waiting at home. About Mrs. Chen, who'd been covering childcare on Faith and Leftovers. About 3 years of nights and weekends teaching himself things he wasn't supposed to know. I can deliver. Good. Richard, work with Hayes to restructure the team. Sarah, I want you overseeing technical decisions. Make sure we don't end up in another situation where ego overrides engineering. Reeves checked her watch. I'm going to tell the client we have a new technical lead and a viable path forward. Try not to make me a liar. She left to find the client. Chen and Vance stayed behind. You just bet your entire career on this, Chen said. You understand that? Yes, sir. Good. Don't make me regret supporting you. He started for the door, then turned back. And Hayes, that documentation folder you showed? Make sure HR gets a copy. All of it. If we're burning Victor, I want to make sure he stays burned. After Chen left, it was just Logan and Vance in the conference room. She was smiling slightly. Feel better? I feel terrified. Good. Confidence gets people killed in this industry. Healthy fear keeps you sharp. She pulled up a chair. You're going to need to restructure the entire team. Some of Victor's people are loyal to him. They'll resist your leadership. Some are just coasters who are hiding behind his reputation. You need to figure out who's worth keeping and who needs to go. I've never managed anyone. Then learn fast. You've got about 6 hours before word spreads that you just took down the golden boy and took his job. Logan ran a hand through his hair. I didn't take his job. I just tried to save the project. That's what taking someone's job looks like when you're not playing politics. You saw a problem, you fixed it, and you made him look incompetent in the process. The motivation doesn't matter. The result is the same. She was right. Logan had just painted a target on his back bigger than anything Victor had dealt with. Half the company would see him as a hero. The other half would see him as a traitor who'd stabbed his boss in the back. I need to call my daughter. Vance looked surprised. Now? I promised her I'd let her know how today went, and I need to hear her voice before I do this. Then make it quick. The client's going to want detailed timelines in about 20 minutes. Logan stepped into the hallway and dialed. Emma picked up on the second ring. She was at Mrs. Chen's apartment, probably doing homework. Daddy, how did it go? It went really well, sweetheart. They liked my ideas. I knew they would. You're the smartest person at your whole company. Logan closed his eyes. I love you, Em. I love you too. Are you coming home for dinner? Probably not tonight. This is going to be a late one. That's okay. Just don't forget to eat. Mrs. Chen says you forget to eat when you're working. I'll eat, I promise. He hung up and went back to the conference room. The client was already there, along with Reeves and Chen. Time to prove he wasn't just good at finding problems. Time to prove he could actually solve them. The next 6 weeks were the hardest of Logan's life. He worked 18-hour days. The team resisted him at first, exactly like Vance had predicted. Marcus was supportive, but he was the exception. Dr. Patel was professional, but distant. The others treated Logan like a temporary inconvenience, someone who'd gotten lucky and would be gone soon enough. Logan didn't have time to win them over gently. He restructured the entire technical approach in the first week, brought in 2 new engineers Vance recommended, let go of 3 of Victor's people who were more interested in politics than programming. It was brutal. People who'd ignored him for months were suddenly taking orders from him. Some of them hated it. One engineer quit rather than report to someone without a degree. Logan let him go without argument. By week 2, the architecture was solid. By week 3, they had a working prototype. By week 4, the system was handling stress tests that would have crashed Victor's design in minutes. Emma saw even less of him than usual. Logan tried to make it home for dinner twice a week, tried to be present on weekends. But there were times he'd come home at midnight to find Emma asleep on the couch, waiting for him, a drawing of the 2 of them taped to the coffee table. Those moments hurt worse than anything Victor had ever done. Mrs. Chen never complained, but Logan could see the concern in her eyes. She misses you. She understands, but she misses you. I know, this is temporary. You said that before. This time I mean it. 6 weeks, then it's done. And then what? Another project? Another crisis? Logan didn't have an answer for that. The 5-week mark came with another client presentation. This time Logan was leading it. No Victor to undermine him. No politics to navigate. Just him and the system he'd built. The demo went perfectly. The system handled twice the projected load without breaking a sweat. The client's data architect asked hard questions and got answers that satisfied him. By the end of the presentation, the CTO was smiling. This is what we needed. This is what we paid for. He shook Logan's hand. You've got 1 week to deployment. Don't screw it up. Logan didn't screw it up. The deployment happened on a Friday. The entire executive team was there. The client was there. Even some of the board members showed up to watch Meridian either save or lose a $20 million contract. Logan stood in the operations center, surrounded by monitors, watching data flow through the system he'd designed. Every transaction routing cleanly, every node running at optimal capacity. No crashes, no failures, no disasters. It worked. At hour 6, when it was clear the system was stable, Reeves pulled Logan aside. Congratulations, you just saved this company's reputation. Thank you, ma'am. Stop calling me ma'am. It makes me feel old. She smiled. How would you feel about a promotion? To what? Senior architect, Victor's position essentially, $75,000 a year, your own team, direct report to Sarah Vance. It was more money than Logan had imagined making in 5 years. It was the kind of position that came with respect, authority, the ability to make decisions without having to fight for them. It was everything he'd worked for. Can I think about it? Reeves looked surprised. You need to think about a promotion and a $20,000 raise? I need to talk to my daughter first. Your daughter is 8. She's the reason I'm here. She deserves to be part of the decision. Reeves studied him for a long moment. You're an interesting man, Hayes. Take the weekend. Let me know Monday. Logan left the office at 8 that night, earlier than he'd left in 6 weeks. He picked up pizza on the way home. Emma's favorite, extra cheese. She was awake when he got there, sitting at the kitchen table with Mrs. Chen, working on a math worksheet. Daddy! She ran to him and he picked her up, pizza box and all, spinning her around until she laughed. Did it work? Emma asked when he set her down. It worked perfectly. I knew it would. You're too smart for it not to work. They ate pizza on the floor of the living room, which was against the rules Logan had set, but he was too tired to care. Emma told him about school, about the book she was reading, about the science project she wanted to do on ecosystems. After she went to bed, Logan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open. His documentation folder was still there. Every email, every stolen idea, every warning ignored. He could send it to HR like Chen had suggested, finish what he'd started, make sure Victor never worked in the industry again. Or he could let it go. Victor was already suspended, already disgraced. The promotion would make Logan's vindication official without having to destroy anyone. Logan stared at the folder for a long time. Then he closed it, moved it to archived files. Not deleted, just done. He'd spent 3 years being invisible, proving himself to people who didn't want to see him. He'd spent the last 6 months being angry, documenting injustice, waiting for revenge. He was tired of being angry. The promotion would speak louder than any folder of evidence. The success of Atlas II would prove what Logan was capable of better than any accusations ever could. Saturday morning, Emma woke him up early. She had a plan. They were going to the park, then the library, then ice cream, a whole day, just the two of them. You're not working today? Not today, sweetheart. What about tomorrow? Not tomorrow either. Emma's smile could have powered the entire city. They spent the day doing nothing important. Swings and slides, books about rainforests, ice cream that melted faster than they could eat it. Emma talked about school and her friends, and whether Logan thought penguins could live in zoos happily, or if they were sad because they weren't in Antarctica. I think they adapt, Logan said. They find ways to be happy even when things aren't perfect. Like you? Logan looked at his daughter, 8 years old and already seen through him. Yeah, like me. That night, after Emma was asleep, Logan sat on his apartment's tiny balcony. The city stretched out below him, lights flickering in windows, lives being lived in countless small rooms. 6 months ago, he'd been nobody, a guy in a thrift store suit who'd gotten lucky with a coding test. Now he was being offered a senior architect position at a company that had barely wanted to interview him. But the promotion wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that he'd stopped being invisible. He'd proven that ability mattered more than credentials, that patience and preparation could beat politics and charm. He'd rewritten his own story, not with rage or revenge, but with competence and timing and the quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly what he was worth. Monday morning, Logan walked into Reeves' office. I'll take the promotion, on one condition. Reeves raised an eyebrow. You're negotiating again? I need flexibility. I have a daughter. I've missed too many dinners and bedtimes. I'll work harder than anyone you've got, but I need to be home by 7 at least 3 nights a week. That's not how senior positions work. Then I'll stay at my current level. The money's not worth losing time with Emma. Reeves leaned back in her chair. You'd turn down this promotion for dinner with your 8-year-old? Every time. She smiled. You're hired, with the flexibility. But Hayes, the work still needs to get done. Figure out how to manage your time or find people you trust to delegate to. I will, thank you. Don't thank me. You earned this. Just don't make me regret it. Logan left her office and went to find his team. His team. The words still felt strange. Marcus was at his desk, headphones on, deep in code. Logan tapped his shoulder. Hey, you got a minute? Marcus pulled off the headphones. Sure, what's up? I'm officially the new senior architect. I'm going to need a second in command. Someone who knows the systems and can make decisions when I'm not available. Interested? Marcus blinked. Are you serious? You sent me that technical analysis when it could have gotten you fired. You saw the problems and you trusted me enough to show me you weren't alone. That's the kind of person I want working with me. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Good. We start restructuring the team tomorrow. I want people who care about the work more than the politics. Think you can help me figure out who that is? Marcus was grinning. I've got a list. Logan spent the rest of the day in meetings, restructuring, planning, building something that felt less like a hierarchy and more like a team. At 6:30, he packed up his laptop and headed for the elevator. Chen caught him in the hallway. Leaving early? Promised my daughter I'd be home for dinner. Chen nodded slowly. Victor used to work until midnight most nights. Wore it like a badge of honor. Victor was trying to prove something. I already know what I'm worth. Yes, Chen said. I suppose you do. Logan picked Emma up from Mrs. Chen's apartment at 7. They made spaghetti together, sauce from a jar and pasta that was slightly overcooked, and it was perfect. After dinner, Emma sat on the couch with her homework while Logan cleaned up the kitchen. She kept glancing at him like she was making sure he was really there. Daddy? Yeah, sweetheart? Are you happy now? At work? Logan dried his hands and joined her on the couch. I think so. It's still hard, but it's different now. Better. Because they see how smart you are? Because I stopped waiting for them to see it. I showed them. Emma thought about that. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you too, Em. I didn't do anything. You waited for me. You believed in me even when I wasn't sure I believed in myself. That's everything. She hugged him, small arms tight around his neck, the same hug she'd given him the morning of his interview a lifetime ago. Logan held her and thought about the man he'd been 6 months ago, exhausted, invisible, working 3 jobs and still barely making it. That man had walked into Meridian Solutions with nothing but skill and desperation and a daughter who deserved better. He'd been terrified then, certain he'd fail, certain they'd see through him and send him back to the warehouse where he belonged. But he hadn't failed. He'd adapted, survived, learned to see the patterns in how power worked and how to navigate them without losing himself in the process. The underdog hadn't just won. He'd changed the game entirely. And tomorrow, he'd show up to an office where people listened when he spoke, where his ideas mattered, where a man without a degree could lead engineers with PhDs because competence trumped credentials when you stopped apologizing for who you were. Tomorrow. But tonight was for Emma, for spaghetti and homework and bedtime stories, for being present in the life that mattered more than any promotion ever could. Logan Hayes had spent his whole life being underestimated. He was done with that now. The first month as senior architect taught Logan that being right and being in charge were 2 completely different skill sets. He could design systems in his sleep. Managing people who resented his promotion was something else entirely. Dr. Patel was professional but cool, treating Logan's instructions like suggestions he'd consider if he felt like it. 2 of the engineers who'd stayed on made a habit of CCing Vance on every email, like they needed a real authority to validate Logan's decisions. And there were whispers. Always whispers. In the break room by the coffee machine, in Slack channels Logan wasn't invited to. He got lucky. Victor was the real talent. Hayes just happened to be there when it fell apart. Give it 6 months, he'll crash just like Victor did. Logan heard all of it, pretended he didn't, focused on the work. Marcus helped. He'd taken to the second-in-command role like he'd been waiting for someone to give him permission to lead. Together, they restructured code reviews, implemented better testing protocols, and started actually documenting decisions so the next person wouldn't have to reverse engineer everything from scratch. You're making enemies, Marcus said one afternoon. They were in a conference room, reviewing performance metrics. The old guard doesn't like that you're changing things. The old guard let Victor steal credit for months and said nothing. I'm not interested in their approval. You should be interested in not getting sabotaged. Logan looked up from his laptop. You think they'd actually sabotage the project? I think people protect their territory. And you just took a lot of territory very quickly. He wasn't wrong. 3 weeks into Logan's new role, someone pushed code to production without proper review. It was sloppy work, the kind of thing that should have been caught in testing. It caused a minor outage. 15 minutes of downtime. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to make Logan look bad. The engineer who'd pushed it was apologetic. "I thought it was approved. I must have missed the review flag." Logan didn't buy it, but he also couldn't prove it was intentional, so he did the only thing he could do. He fixed the problem, documented what went wrong, and implemented new safeguards so it couldn't happen again. "You're not going to call him out?" Marcus asked. "And say what? That I think he deliberately sabotaged me, but I can't prove it? That just makes me look paranoid, so he gets away with it." "No, he gets watched, and if it happens again, we'll have a pattern. That's when you call people out. When you have proof." Marcus smiled slightly. "You learned that the hard way, didn't you?" "Yeah, I did." The Victor situation resolved itself in a way that was both satisfying and anticlimactic. HR's investigation found exactly what Logan's documentation had shown, a pattern of taking credit for other people's work. Not just Logan's. Turned out Victor had been doing this for years, across multiple projects, with multiple engineers. The official termination came down in week 6 of Logan's new role. Victor didn't fight it, didn't make a scene, just cleaned out his office on a Thursday afternoon while most people were in meetings and left. Logan found out from an email. Brief, professional. Victor Lang's employment has been terminated effective immediately. Questions should be directed to HR. He sat at his desk, staring at the email, waiting to feel something. Vindication, maybe? Satisfaction. The rush of victory that was supposed to come when you finally won. He felt nothing. Or maybe just tired. Emma noticed when he got home that night. She'd gotten good at reading his moods. Something happened at work. The guy who was stealing my ideas got fired. Good. He was mean. He wasn't mean exactly, just broken in a way that made him hurt other people. Emma thought about that while she ate her chicken nuggets. "Do you feel bad for him?" "A little. He was good at some things, just not good enough to admit when he needed help." "Are you good enough?" Logan smiled. "I'm trying to be." The real test came 2 months in. The client wanted to expand Atlas 2 again. Double capacity. New features. A $10 million add-on to the existing contract. It was Logan's first project leading from the start. No Victor to clean up after, no disaster to rescue. Just him and a blank whiteboard and a team that was maybe 60% on his side. He spent a week on the architecture. Not alone this time. He brought in Marcus, Dr. Patel, 2 of the newer engineers, even Vance for the technical review. They argued about database design, debated caching strategies, pushed back on Logan's ideas when they saw problems. It was messy, frustrating. Nothing like the clean, solitary work Logan had done in his apartment at midnight, but it was better, stronger. When they finally presented the design to Chen and Reeves, it had been stress-tested by 5 different perspectives instead of just one. "This is solid work," Chen said, paging through the technical spec. "More conservative than I expected from you, Hayes. I learned from Victor's mistakes. Ambition without foundation is just gambling." Reeves smiled. "And you don't strike me as a gambling man. Not when other people's jobs depend on me being right." The project kicked off the following Monday. Logan ran it differently than Victor had. Daily stand-ups where people actually talked about blockers instead of pretending everything was fine. Code reviews where junior engineers could question senior engineers without getting shut down. Retrospectives where the team discussed what wasn't working and actually changed things instead of just documenting complaints. It was slower than Victor's approach, more deliberate, but 3 months in they were ahead of schedule and under budget, and the code quality was better than anything Meridian had shipped in years. "You're making the rest of us look bad," Vance said during one of their weekly check-ins. She was smiling, but there was something serious underneath it. "The other architects are wondering why their projects are struggling when yours is running smooth." "It's not running smooth. We hit a database scaling issue last week that cost us 2 days. But you hit it in development, not production. That's the difference. You're finding problems before they become disasters. That's just good process. That's leadership. There's a difference." Logan shifted uncomfortably. He still wasn't used to being called a leader. Leaders were people like Chen and Reeves, people with degrees and decades of experience. Logan was just a guy who'd figured out how to manage his time and delegate effectively because he had a daughter waiting at home and couldn't afford to work until midnight anymore. But the results spoke for themselves. By month 4, 2 other teams had adopted Logan's stand-up format. By month 5, Chen was asking Logan to review other architects' designs before they went to clients. By month 6, there was talk of making Logan a director. "Absolutely not," Logan said when Vance mentioned it. "Why not? You've earned it." "Because director means more meetings, more politics, and less time actually building things. I like building things. You can't stay a senior architect forever. Watch me." Emma turned 9 that spring. They celebrated at the zoo again because that's what she wanted, even though Logan offered to take her somewhere fancier, somewhere that felt worthy of a father who was finally making real money. "I like the zoo," Emma said. "It's our thing, their thing." Like Friday night pizza and weekend library trips and bedtime stories that Logan was almost too tired to read, but read anyway because Emma deserved that consistency. The promotion had changed Logan's bank account, but it hadn't changed the things that mattered. He still lived in the same apartment, still drove the same car with the check engine light that came on whenever it felt like it, still bought Emma's clothes at Target and his own at the same Goodwill where he'd found the interview suit. "You could afford better," Mrs. Chen said one night. She'd come over for dinner, which had become a monthly tradition. "A bigger place, better neighborhood, schools with actual funding." "I could, but Emma's happy here. Her friends are here. You're here." Logan paused. Moving would feel like saying this wasn't good enough. And it was. It is. Mrs. Chen smiled. "You're a strange man, Logan Hayes." "I know." The Atlas II expansion deployed in month 7, flawlessly. The system handled double the projected load without breaking a sweat. The client was thrilled. Chen was thrilled. Reeves pulled Logan into her office the day after launch. "I'm promoting you to director." "I said no to that." "You said no when Sarah suggested it. I'm not suggesting. I'm telling you." She held up a hand before Logan could argue. "Before you give me the speech about wanting to stay technical, hear me out. Director doesn't mean you stop building. It means you help other people build better. We have 6 architects now. Half of them are struggling because they're brilliant engineers who have no idea how to lead. You can teach them." "I'm not a teacher. You taught yourself distributed systems from YouTube and Stack Overflow while working 2 jobs and raising a daughter alone. You're exactly a teacher. You just don't realize it yet." Logan went home that night and asked Emma what she thought. "What's a director?" "Someone who helps other people do their jobs better." "That sounds nice. Would you have to work more?" "Maybe a little, but I'd also have more control over when I work. I could probably make it to more of your school stuff." Emma considered this seriously. "Would you be happy?" "I don't know. Maybe." "Then you should try it. You can always go back if you hate it." 9 years old and already wiser than Logan had been at 30. He took the promotion. Director of Engineering Architecture, a title that sounded fake and came with a salary that felt even faker, $95,000 a year. Logan stared at the offer letter for 10 minutes, trying to comprehend that number. 3 years ago, he'd been making $32,000 between the warehouse and the grocery store. Now he was making triple that, for a job he loved, working with people who respected him, building systems that mattered. The imposter syndrome hit hard some days. Logan would sit in meetings with VPs and board members offering opinions on technical strategy and hear a voice in his head asking who the hell he thought he was. A high school graduate with no degree pretending he belonged in rooms like this. But then he'd remember the documentation folder, the months of evidence proving he'd been right when everyone else was wrong. The Atlas deployment that had saved Meridian's reputation. The expansion that had come in ahead of schedule because Logan had built a team that actually worked together instead of competing for credit. He'd earned this. Not through politics or charm or lucky breaks, through competence and patience and the quiet refusal to accept that credentials mattered more than ability. 6 months into the director role, Logan got an unexpected email. From Victor. The subject line was just, "Hey." The body was 3 paragraphs. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since Meridian. A lot of therapy too, if I'm being honest. I want to apologize for how I treated you. You were right about everything. The architecture. The problems I was ignoring. The credit I took that wasn't mine to take. I told myself I was synthesizing, leading, doing what managers do. Really, I was just scared that if people knew I needed help, they'd see I wasn't as brilliant as my reputation suggested. That fear made me cruel, made me steal from people who deserved better, made me steal from you. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that you were right to stand up to me, and that I hope you're building good things now. You always had more talent than I did. You just needed someone to get out of your way. Victor. Logan read it twice. Then he closed his laptop and went to find Emma. She was in her room, reading a book about marine biology, planning her next zoo trip, probably. Hey, sweetheart, question for you. Yeah? If someone hurt you, then apologize later, would you forgive them? Emma set down her book. Did they mean the apology? I think so. Then, yeah, probably. Holding on to being mad just makes you tired. She paused. Is this about the mean guy from work? Yeah. Are you going to forgive him? Logan thought about that, about the months of documentation and anger, the nights he'd spent building evidence for revenge he'd ultimately never taken, the promotion that had spoken louder than any accusation ever could. I think I already did. I just didn't realize it until now. He wrote back to Victor. 3 sentences. Thank you for the apology. I appreciate the honesty. I hope you're building good things too. It wasn't friendship. Probably never would be. But it was closure. And closure was enough. The first year as director taught Logan that success wasn't about being the smartest person in the room. It was about building rooms full of smart people who trusted each other enough to argue without destroying each other. He hired 3 new architects, promoted 2 engineers from within, started a mentorship program for junior engineers that focused on technical skills and people skills in equal measure. You're building a pipeline, Vance observed during one of their check-ins. Training people to replace you. Training people to be better than me. There's a difference. Most directors see that as a threat. Most directors are insecure. I already know what I'm worth. I don't need to protect my territory to prove it. Vance smiled. You've changed. From the guy who showed up to his interview in a suit from Goodwill. I'm wearing the same suit right now. I just had it tailored. That's not what I mean. You're settled, comfortable, like you finally believe you belong here. Logan thought about that. I think I stopped caring whether I belong. I just care about doing good work and going home to my daughter. Everything else is noise. Emma started 4th grade that fall. She'd gotten into the gifted program at school, which made Logan's chest hurt with pride he didn't know how to express. She was reading 3 grades above her level, building ecosystem models out of cardboard and string, asking questions about climate science that Logan had to research before he could answer. She's brilliant, Mrs. Chen said, just like her father. She's better than me. She's got time and support and opportunities I never had. You gave her those things by refusing to accept the limits other people put on you. Logan had never thought of it that way. But maybe Mrs. Chen was right. Maybe the best thing he could teach Emma wasn't distributed systems or database design. Maybe it was the simple truth that credentials didn't define capability, that being underestimated was only permanent if you accepted it. The second Atlas expansion deployed 18 months after Logan's promotion to director, triple the original capacity, processing over 500,000 transactions per second. The client was already talking about expansion 4, 5, 6. Meridian had gone from nearly losing the contract to being their strategic technology partner. Chen threw a celebration, not at some upscale bar this time. At the office, with pizza and beer and the kind of casual atmosphere that felt more authentic than expensive scotch ever had. Speech, someone shouted. Hayes, give us a speech. Logan stood reluctantly. He hated speeches, but the team was watching expectantly and Chen was gesturing for him to say something. Okay. Brief speech. When I started here 2 years ago, I was terrified. I had no degree, no experience, no reason to think I belonged in a place like this. What I had was skill I'd taught myself and a daughter who needed me to be better than I'd been. That was enough to get me in the door. But it wasn't enough to build what we've built together. This project succeeded because we worked as a team, because we trusted each other enough to admit when we didn't have answers, because we asked for help instead of pretending we were brilliant enough to do it alone. I learned that from you, all of you. So thank you for making me better, for making this better. The applause was genuine, warm. Logan sat down quickly, embarrassed and relieved it was over. Later, Marcus found him on the roof. The building had a small outdoor space on the 23rd floor that nobody used. Logan had discovered it months ago and came up here sometimes when meetings got overwhelming. That was a good speech. It was awful. It was honest. That's better than good. Marcus leaned against the railing. You know what I respect most about you? You never pretended you were perfect. Victor always acted like he had all the answers. You ask questions, admit mistakes, make people feel like it's okay to not know everything. That's just survival. I can't pretend to have answers I don't have. Most people in leadership positions do exactly that. Fake it until they make it, right? You just don't fake it. You're real. People trust that. Logan looked out at the city, lights coming on as dusk settled. Somewhere out there, Emma was at Mrs. Chen's apartment, probably doing homework, probably wondering when he'd be home. I should get going. Yeah, me too. Wife's making dinner. Marcus headed for the stairs, then turned back. Hey, Logan, I'm glad you stayed. After everything with Victor, would have been easier to quit. Quitting would have meant he won. No, quitting would have meant you let fear make your decisions. You didn't. That's why we're here. Why any of this worked. After Marcus left, Logan stayed on the roof for another 10 minutes, thinking about the documentation folder he'd never sent to HR. The revenge he'd chosen not to take. The promotion he'd almost turned down because he didn't think he deserved it. Fear had almost made his decisions. Fear that he wasn't good enough, that his lack of credentials would always matter more than his actual ability, that standing up to Victor would cost him everything. But fear was just another voice in his head, and Logan had learned to ignore voices that didn't serve him. He took the elevator down, picked up Emma from Mrs. Chen's. They went home and made dinner together, pasta with vegetables, because Emma was on a health kick after learning about nutrition in school. Daddy, what's the best thing that happened today? It was their new routine. Emma had read about gratitude practices in a book and insisted they do it every night. The project deployed successfully. No crashes, no disasters, just clean, solid work. Is that what makes you happy? Things working right? Logan thought about that. No. What makes me happy is the team trusting each other, building something together that none of us could have built alone. The work is just the evidence that we did it right. That's a very dad answer. Yeah, probably. He smiled. What about you? Best thing today? I got 100% on my science test, and Sarah said my ecosystem model was the best in class. That's my girl. They did dishes together. Emma washed, Logan dried. Simple. Ordinary. The kind of moment that mattered more than any promotion or successful deployment ever could. Later, after Emma was asleep, Logan opened his laptop. The documentation folder was still there, archived but not deleted. He looked at it for a moment. All those months of evidence, all that anger turned into spreadsheets and timestamps. He'd kept it as insurance, proof that he'd been right in case anyone ever questioned his version of events. But nobody had questioned it. The results had spoken for themselves. Logan deleted the folder, permanently this time. Not because he was forgiving Victor exactly, more because he didn't need the proof anymore. His work at Meridian had become its own evidence. His team, his projects, his leadership, all of it proved what Logan was capable of better than any collection of emails ever could. The past didn't matter. The credentials he didn't have didn't matter. The people who'd underestimated him didn't matter. What mattered was showing up, doing the work, being honest about limitations and generous with knowledge, building systems that served people instead of protecting ego. Logan had spent 3 years being invisible, trying to prove himself to people who didn't want to see him. Then he'd spent 6 months being angry, documenting injustice, planning revenge that never quite satisfied. Now, finally, he was just being himself. A father who loved his daughter, an engineer who loved solving problems, a leader who trusted his team, a man who'd rewritten his story not through credentials or charm, but through competence and the quiet refusal to accept other people's limitations as his own. The underdog hadn't just won. He'd changed the rules of the game entirely, proven that the most dangerous person in any room wasn't the one with the best resume or the biggest reputation. It was the one everyone underestimated, the one who worked while others took credit, the one who documented while others schemed, the one who waited for exactly the right moment to show everyone what competence actually looked like. Logan closed his laptop. Tomorrow he'd go to work and lead his team and probably deal with some crisis that would require patience and technical skill in equal measure. Tomorrow he'd make decisions that affected dozens of people and millions of dollars and try not to let the imposter syndrome convince him he didn't belong. But tonight was for this. For the quiet apartment and the sleeping daughter and the certainty that he'd done everything right where it mattered most. He'd started this journey trying to prove he was good enough. Somewhere along the way, he'd stopped needing to prove anything. The work spoke for itself. Emma's trust in him spoke for itself. The team he'd built and the systems that ran flawlessly spoke for themselves. Logan Hayes didn't need anyone's permission to be brilliant anymore. He'd given himself permission. That was the only validation that had ever mattered. And in the end, that was the real lesson. Not that hard work always pays off, because it doesn't. Not that justice always prevails, because it doesn't. But that your worth isn't determined by who recognizes it. It's determined by whether you recognize it yourself. By whether you're willing to stand up when everyone expects you to stay down. By whether you're patient enough to wait for the right moment instead of demanding immediate vindication. The world will always underestimate people who don't fit the mold. People without degrees, without connections, without the right background. But being underestimated is only a weakness if you believe it. And Logan had stopped believing it the moment he stepped into that boardroom and showed everyone what he'd been building in the shadows. He wasn't the underdog anymore. He was just a man who'd learned that the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to accept other people's definitions of who you're supposed to be. And he'd taught his daughter the same lesson, not through speeches or grand gestures, but through example. By showing up, by doing the work, by building a life worth living on his own terms. That was enough. That had always been enough. Logan just hadn't known it until now.